Here, man, we have 1968's Night of the Living Dead, directed by George Romero. Then we have 1985's The Return of the Living Dead, directed by Dan O'Bannon, and the story by John A. Russo. He's responsible for this. Bannon knocked this out of the park. Bannon, he also was one of the writers on Dark Star. He was one of the writers on Aliens. He was one of the writers, the guy, he came up with these characters. He wrote Screamer. He wrote the screenplay for Total Recall. This guy, Return of the Living Dead, he is a big name in this world. So you got Dan O'Bannon's, this is tough. Dan O'Bannon's, geez Louise, The Return of the Living Dead, or George A. Romero, who, he and his buddy, who also created Night of the Living Dead, John A. Russo. Okay, it's family right here. It's the creators of Night of the Living Dead against each other.
Yeah, as it should be.
Yeah.
They got together and they did the first movie and they decided to branch off and give their own version of what the sequel of the original Night of the Living Dead should look like. When I was a kid and I watched that, I was so amazed because I was scared because in Night of the Living Dead, they show them actually eating the intestines and they're pulling them out of the bodies and it's like gruesome and you're like, what is that about? Or when the truck catches on fire and they go in there and they kind of barbecued the people in there. So now they're going in there and eating. When I did my research, did you know that some of the extras on Return of the Living Dead got paid extra to eat real calf brains?
Yeah, they were just nomming on stuff that was out there.
Yeah, and so in Night of the Living Dead, I actually found this out too. They in the truck when the zombies go in and they take something and they're starting to bite on it and it looks like they're covered in blood. That was actually chocolate syrup and a ham that they were eating, which I think is great because in both of those movies, some of the extras actually ate stuff on scene for the movie.
It's Pittsburgh folk coming out, supporting.
Yeah.
And so okay, I want to see. I love that fact. Some of that stuff that they're munching on, it's such a family atmosphere. Oh, it makes me happy.
And I remember thinking, that looks like real brains. They must have done such a good job in the special effects department. And then years later, you find out, no, because they were eating real brains.
I was trying to look something up here. So we know that Return of the Living Dead had a $4 million budget. Now that's 85. So let's say a $12 million budget. I'm trying to look up the Night of the Living Dead budget. And, obviously we would have to do inflation. Do you have any data on that, Night of the Living Dead? I just want to have
the only thing that I had for Night of the Living Dead as far as data and ticket sales and how it did at the box office was when I mentioned that it made over 263 times its initial budget. I don't know what that initial budget is, but I guarantee that no other zombie movie is surpassed 263 times their starting budget.
So they're saying it was made for $114,000. So let's add some inflation on there, and that's probably 68. Let's just say $1 million. That's probably more than what we should. So we have $1 million. That's too much. Let's say 500,000, 600,000, and then we have the cost of that probably like a $10 million, $8 million for. So does it matter that Return of the Living Dead had 17 years to become more refined, and that's what Night of the Living Dead created? So shooting during the week, not much money, you had a bunch of commercial people making this movie in the country of outside of Pittsburgh, but then you have the kind of more refined, I guess, Return of the Living Dead. It's still an indie picture, but do you think that should sway our opinion at all?
I think it should, and I'll say the biggest argument here, either one of these guys takes it, I'm good with it. It doesn't really matter, but I think like in a zombie movie when the virus or whatever's causing the zombies to come up, when it first starts, the characters don't know how to deal with them. And they've usually learned throughout things that they can do, whether they can be tricked, whether they can be killed, whether they become made docile because it's dark, or all those factors. When you direct or write a zombie movie from here on out, you're always going to go back to that Night of the Living Dead. Mm-hmm. And that was really the first one that started this whole thing. And I don't think not all zombie movies follow that to a T, but I think they all get some type of inspiration from Night of the Living Dead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I really feel like Night of the Living Dead is patient zero that bites a person, that starts the zombie apocalypse. And every movie made after that is like that zombie virus spreading out into the population around it.
Man. All right. I'm going to take Night of the Living Dead. It's boring, but I do love Return of the Living Dead because these people don't know how to deal with this. Kill the brain. Oh, we killed the brain. Now it's not doing anything. That wasn't effective. So what do we do now? And then it rains, and let's cremate the body. That's the right thing to do. And then it rains, and then that happens, and then the punks. But Dwayne Jones.
Yeah, I want to try to. I'm actually gonna. So you think Night of the Living Dead should win the tournament? I am actually, even though when I originally did this bracket, I saw Return of the Living Dead beating it all. Beating them all and going into the finals and winning the finals because of what it did for me. But I will tell you this. When I watched Return of the Living Dead, that the horror, the scariness of it, you know what a lot of that came from? It came from the fact that I had already watched Night of the Living Dead, and I had made up my mind that we can survive this. We know what zombies are made up of. And then Return of the Living Dead flips that on us and says, nope, headshots don't work anymore. But having said that, I just can't come up with enough reasons where I think you're wrong with Night of the Living Dead going forward.
Normally I'm all for a sexy pick. You know how you sometimes when you look at your March Madness bracket or your sports brackets, or you and I think you and I both watch MMA, sometimes you want to make that sexy pick. And I just can't pick. So I'm saying that Return of the Living Dead is the sexy pick here, as opposed to the classic Night of the Living Dead. But I just can't pick that. I can't come up with enough reasons to put it ahead of Night of the Living Dead.
And I, if it was, say we weren't having this conversation and somebody said, hey, what's your favorite zombie movie? I would probably say my favorite zombie movie is Return of the Living Dead because of the effect that it had on me. But I will say that the reason that it had, I already discussed this a little bit, but it really started from me first watching that Night of the Living Dead to get a fear of zombies, to instill that first fear of I know what a zombie is. They're scary. I don't like them. They can kill you, blah, blah, blah. All of that came from Night of the Living Dead started that whole thing. Had I never watched any zombie movies before I watched Return of the Living Dead, I don't think Return of the Living Dead would have had the impact on me back then that it had I not seen the original movie.
Yeah, just with Dwayne Jones, they're coming to get you, Barbara. The girl killing the mom with a trowel, which is beautiful. They call that back in Cabin in the Woods. The end, that's just a complete gut shot. The news reports. It's boring, but I'm happy with it, man. I'm happy to put Night of the Living Dead as the champion here.
And I am too. I felt like, it's like when you're winning a prize and they're like, you can either get this brand new car or $10,000 cash. Both of those are good options. Yeah. Getting a new car is great. Getting $10,000 of cash is great. But sometimes you look at it and that car might be worth more than $10,000. But the cash is cash in hand, and that's how I see Night of the Living Dead. It's cash in hand. It's got all of the classic things that you want. It was, shooting at night and, some of the makeup and special effects stuff that they did for then. The character-driven part of it, as far as, how those characters interacted and the different things that they did with it, it's I just can't talk you out of. I just don't think I can talk you out of Night of the Living Dead. And if I can't talk you out of it, does Return deserve to win? And I'm like, probably not. Probably not.
It's just I can spin a good yarn. I can make cases for movies that people are like, oh, wow, that makes sense. But if someone said, Mark, tell me why Return of the Living Dead is better than Night of the Living Dead, I don't think I could believably do it. So it would be a half-hearted attempt. But yeah, listen, we didn't pick the sexy pick, but you take this thing in your bracket, you're gonna win. And so, you got it's. And I don't think I'm even picking it just because it's the original pick. I know there are zombie movies before it, but I think it's still relevant. I think some of the themes are still relevant today. I think it's still scary today. I still think it pushes boundaries. In '68, you had the naked zombie that was running around. You had the carnivores. You had just people eating flesh, figuring out the situation. Just the beginning and the car. And listen, yeah, Barbara is an interesting character, but I mean, when Ben slaps her, I mean, that was like the slap heard around the world. My students went, whoa, when they saw that. So I'm not just giving it to it because it's the original. I'm giving it to it because it was daring and it was gutsy and it still holds up too. So no, I'm happy. This is good.
Yeah, I can't complain. There were some of those movies that I picked, and I was like, if this one wins, I'll be really disappointed. I felt like even our final four was hard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you talking about the finals being hard. Even the final four was hard, and that's a testament to the zombie horror genre, because it's just like, it's one of those things that maybe some people don't freak out. Like, I don't get freaked out about vampire movies. You could show me the scariest vampire movie ever made, and I would be like, oh, that was a cool movie. It was interesting how it happened in it. But, like, zombie movies have always had a weird place for me, where they've always kind of, like, touched that part of your brain that starts to release adrenaline and get you that sort of, like, I'm fearful now.
Everywhere you go, how would I fortify this?
Everywhere.
I'm in a Home Depot. How would I do this? I'm in a Sprout. How would zombies? I still think that today. It's so ingrained in me. By the way, have you watched 30 Days of Night?
I have.
Oh, okay. What do you think about the mean vampires in that one?
So, I love 30 Days of Night. I felt like that movie was a different take on vampires, and I feel like anytime that you do something different with a known monster, and it's different in that, like, when he takes the syringe out and injects himself, and his only solution to beating them is becoming one of them. And, like, that was just cool, man. That movie was just, that was a cool, and it ended sad. I mean, because he knows that if he doesn't get destroyed, he's going to be a monster like them. And he just sits there and watches the sun rise up. But I felt like those vampires and the way they did that movie, that was an awesome take on vampires.
All right, I'm happy to hear that. I mean, you're right. I don't think it's scary, but there's some scenes in there that are just so mean. And
yeah.
For me, the things that linger in my memory are the mean moments. So there's a movie called I Saw the Devil. It's a Korean movie that punched me in the face. There's a Korean movie called Thirst. It's a zombie film that destroyed me because how mean and how deep it takes you into the trenches. So for me, Night of the Living Dead, the ending sticks with me, the meanness of it all, and just what happens to Brendan Gleeson's eye. The one problem 20 Days Later is when they drive over all those cars. I didn't really get that scene. But other than that, I mean, we picked the right winner, man. But hey, well, thanks for joining me, dude. This was awesome. I mean,
Yeah, man, anytime. Like, I love talking about, like, I only watch a certain amount of movies that, I really take an interest in. And honestly, a little confession here, the reason I'm so interested in zombies now and zombie movies is because as a kid, they scared me so much. Like, I couldn't describe even as a kid, vampire movies didn't scare me. I thought they were cool. I thought vampires were, they were a monster, but I didn't fear them the way I did zombies. And there was just something about a rotting corpse trying to eat you. It got something primal inside my brain that has always affected me. And so I really love the zombies horror movie, but I also love all other kinds of movies, and I take an interest in them. And I had a lot of fun researching, like, little known facts about each of those movies, because sometimes you're like, wow, really? Like, I had no idea, and it's interesting. It's interesting to be a fan of movies and find out sometimes that stuff doesn't always go right when they're making those movies.
Well, we should tackle maybe the Dawn of the Dead remake, or 28 Days Later, or World War Z next. I think that'd be a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Any one of those. I mean, if you really want to do one, I would say Dawn of the Dead remake would be really fun.
All right, let's do it.
Because it's a remake of a classic zombie, like usually you do sequels and it's like, oh, this is the next movie in that line and this is the next movie. This was a remake of already what's considered, Romero's works are always considered like cutting edge for the time. They created the zombie genre. They created these ideas of hopelessness and pending doom and how we deal with them. But like Dawn of the Dead is just a really, really fun, scary movie. And that's why I like it so much, the remake, is because it's a fun, scary movie.
All right, we'll do that next.
All right.
All right, well, thank you for joining me.
All right, man, pleasure. Anytime.
This is awesome. So for me, Mark Hoffmeyer, for Doug Brabman, this is Movies, Films, and Flicks. We'll see you next week.